Brought to you by Express Care Health and Skin Center. Get in, get out, get better.
Half a day, everybody, and welcome back to Healthy Living Tuesday right here on KUM News Extra. Dr. Jitka Lom from Express Care is joining us again, educating us on what malaria is. Now, doctor, we have a bunch of questions that people ask from Facebook. And surprisingly, people very, very concerned about malaria and very concerned about whether they might have it already. So that's kind of interesting. So let's go to Sinahanya for question number 1. And our first question comes to us from Paul. We got this from Facebook, and Paul posts on our wall, is malaria a contagious disease?
It is one that spreads in the area, but again, spreading only through a mosquito. So if you live with somebody who has malaria and you don't have any mosquitoes around, you're going to be completely fine. You cannot catch it from breathing on each other or sharing foods or anything like that. It has to be the mosquito biting your buddy and then biting you, and that's how you will get malaria. So that's why big, huge regions of Africa have tons of malaria in India, because there's so many mosquitoes and they're biting person after person and spreading the parasite.
And that's what you said before we went to commercial break. If you have it and then a mosquito bites you, it passes it on to somebody else.
So, and you mentioned how to prevent it. Well, if you can prevent mosquito bites with your DEET and your sprays and all that, clothing, knowing that the female mosquito likes to come out at nighttime when it's dark and cool, so staying indoors at nighttime and trying to wear light-colored clothing, because the dark-colored clothing tends to attract them too.
Okay, well, let's go to question number 2 now. Gentlemen in the back, this one comes from Janet from Dedido. This one a little bit vague, Dr. Lom, but Janet asks, who is at risk for malaria? So like maybe in terms of people with existing health conditions?
Yes, the very young, the very old, the very frail. These are people who are more prone to malaria, and the malnourished people, particularly though in, again, Africa, in places in Southeast Asia or India, Bangladesh, places like that. And these are millions and millions of people. I mean, actually, I think it's like over 2 billion people are exposed to malaria in the world, and that's why it's such a big health initiative for the World Health Organization and for Bill Gates. But thankfully, you know, we don't have this disease on Guam, only if you travel somewhere else.
Okay, well, interesting information. Now, number 3 comes to us from Talafofo, and this is from Sydney. And Sydney asks, if a mother is taking an anti-malarial drug and breastfeeding at the same time, will her baby be protected from malaria because of the medication transferred in her breast milk?
Wow, that's an amazing question. No, actually the baby will not be protected. So pregnant people can still take anti-malarial medication if they're traveling to somewhere that has malaria. But if you already have a baby and you're breastfeeding and you both have malaria, or the mother has malaria and baby may or may not have malaria, each one needs to be treated separately, because the breast milk does not give you enough antibiotic.
And typically if you are expecting, or if you have delivered already and you are breastfeeding, they really try and not make you take certain types of medications, because that will be passed on to the young one.
That's true, but in some cases it's a risk-benefit thing, right? So the mother needs treatment for malaria because it could be a fatal disease. She has to get treated for that. So in developing countries, they do treat the mother. Maybe they have somebody else feed the baby for a while till she's better.
Okay, interesting topic especially. All right, Jordan is our next question. Jordan comes from Jigo, and he asks, or she, is it true there is no malaria vaccine? And if not, why in today's age of modern medication?
Also a great question, wow. Well, they are working on vaccines, but here's the thing, this parasite that the mosquito carries around is incredibly smart, and so whenever you develop a vaccine against it, it will morph and change a little bit, and then the vaccine won't work against the new brand of this, the new offspring of this parasite.
The string mutates.
Yeah, it mutates.
Now that I know.
There you go.
I've read a lot of X-Men comic books.
There you go. So it's a mutating parasite, and so that's why in the world too there are resistant areas for malaria where one drug will not work in, let's say, India, whereas it will work in Southeast Asia. We call those chloroquine-resistant areas of the world. So that's the problem with antibiotics. They work for a while till the organism figures it out and gets smart.
Okay, well, let's keep this thing rolling. Kevin from Manilao asks, if I get malaria, Dr. Lom, will I have it for the rest of my life?
Well, you will if you're not treated with medication, and that's what happens with people in developing countries or that are not diagnosed, is that they will have, if they don't die of malaria right away, they will have relapses off and on, basically like having a horrible flu every few months or every few years. where that means that the parasite has reproduced enough that it's sort of released and it creates this terrible illness off and on. Eventually they may die of it. But if you are treated, meaning you receive between only 3 to 7 days of antibiotics, you basically are cured. If you have a relapse, if there were some parasites hiding in your liver and you get another episode, you can take the medication again and you can be cured of malaria if you live in a developed world.
All right, well, this is our last question now. This comes from Chalampago, and Marianne asks, where does malaria occur? Specifically, you've touched on that before, but is it common to warmer regions?
Yes, it is, because again, this disease is transferred by mosquitoes. They tend to live in warmer climates, and there's a lot more of them in warmer climates than in the north or the extreme south. And the parasite as well is one that lives in warmer climates. So the region is sort of, if you look on the map, in the tropical areas of the world.
The very temperate areas.
Yes.
Okay, well, Doctor, thank you so much. That was an
You're welcome.
amazing conversation as always, and we look forward to speaking with you next week because we will be talking about ankle injuries and knee injuries.
That's right. So for all those athletes and sports people out there, we'll hopefully help you out.
Can't wait for that. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
All right, so stay tuned, everybody, because that is going to be an interesting show next week, but we have more show coming up, so stay tuned. Extra continues right here on KUAF.